All right, what's up, guys? In today's video, we'll be discussing how to become a hybrid athlete for beginners. So let's dive right in. What is a hybrid athlete? A hybrid athlete is anyone who comes from a bodybuilding or powerlifting background, or it could be vice versa. Anyone who comes from a running or endurance background who wants to get into bodybuilding or powerlifting, but essentially it is someone who um, lifts weights heavy, maintains their muscle, and can run and do like long endurance sports concurrently. So pretty much it's just lifting, bodybuilding, and doing cardio concurrently. Generally speaking, before hybrid theory or before hybrid training became what it is today, bodybuilders, or it was kind of thought as if people who had lots of muscle couldn't really do endurance stuff, and people who had endurance couldn't really do muscle. But it turns out you actually can. So some credentials about me: I've been running for 15 years, cycling for 11 years, doing bodybuilding and endurance sports concurrently for 8 years. I've got a 310-pound bench press at 173 pounds. I've been near stage lean multiple times. I've been shredded multiple times. I've done multiple bulk and cut cycles. I've put on about 40 pounds of muscle in 8 years. And anyways, let's get into it. All right. So step number one. This is very important. You always want to lift weights prior to doing cardio. Okay. So a lot of people might not agree with this, but it's true. If you're a hybrid athlete, you're only a hybrid, right? If you have muscle and if you're strong. The second you start losing strength and muscle mass, it's not like no one cares anymore, right? Like who cares? The point of being hybrid is to be as big and strong as possible while being as fast as possible. And in order to do that, you have to prioritize one over the other. And you always have to prioritize lifting prior to doing cardio, okay? Because if you don't lift prior to doing cardio, if you do it the opposite way, if you do cardio prior to lifting weights, you will lose you will lose strength and you will lose muscle mass. I don't care how long, I don't care how many hours you put between sessions. I don't care how many calories you eat between sessions. So for example, let's say you run 5 miles at 7 a.m. and you lift at 7 p.m. and you eat 4,000 calories in between, which is a lot. Your lift is still going to suffer because I don't know the science behind it, but I just have 8 years of experience in doing this, and I've observed this in others. Your lift is still going to suffer because you did cardio earlier in the day. Okay, so you always have to do lifting before cardio. Remember, as a hybrid, it's important to either you want to maintain the strength you have and maintain the muscle you have, but ideally you want to gain the muscle and gain strength, which is totally possible. We'll get into that. And so in order to do that, you always have to lift prior to doing cardio. Okay, the reason you see a lot of guys who lose strength and muscle when they're training for Ironman, training for marathons, is because they're prioritizing marathon training. Okay, that's like that's problem number one. They're prioritizing marathon training. Well, you can still run a fast marathon. You can still run a sub 3 hour marathon, but you just have to prioritize lifting. How do you do that? You literally lift before you run. Okay, like a lot of guys will either reduce intensity or reduce volume in the gym. You can't do that. You have to maintain with the same frequency, same intensity as if you weren't training for some cardiovascular event. Okay, so that brings me to point two. Do not reduce your lifting volume or intensity. This is where a lot of famous and popular hybrid athletes go wrong. This is why they get skinny when they're in Ironman marathon prep or whatever prep for whatever race. They're reducing their lifting volume or intensity because they think that it's more important to prioritize cardio when training for a specific event to accomplish a specific goal. And while that does make logical sense, it's going to result in you um, losing muscle mass and losing strength, okay? Which is what you do not want as a hybrid. Again, you do not want to reduce your lifting volume or intensity. You have to train as if you're still a bodybuilder. You have to train as if you're still a powerlifter. And I understand it sounds hard, but who cares? Like, yeah, it sounds hard. It is difficult. It requires a lot of work and effort, but it is what it is. Congratulations. There's a reason very few people can do it successfully. All right. So do not reduce your lifting volume or intensity. Okay. Don't start lifting less weight. Don't start lifting fewer days. Lift like you aren't training, like you aren't running, and prioritize lifting. All right. So in regard to specific training, all right. So for this specific video, I have running slash cycling down, but most people who are interested in hybrid training are particularly interested in getting good at running. So we're gonna leave cycling out today. But if you get good at running, if you get good at running first, it'll put you in a great position to get good at cycling. And I'm a cyclist, but cycling is more expensive to get into. It takes a lot more time to do, and it's inconvenient to do in the winter if you don't have a trainer. But I love cycling. Everyone should cycle, but it's certainly not for everyone, and it's not as convenient as running. So we'll get into some training. All right. So running for cycling. Now this section is for people with some athletic background. Now what do I mean? I mean people who played sports that required fair amounts of running. Okay. I don't mean like cardio. I don't mean sports like wrestling. Wrestling's great. I don't mean sports like that though. I mean sports that literally required you to like run, and sports in which your legs took lots of impact. So soccer, lacrosse, volleyball, track and field, cross country, obviously, just any sports that required lots of running. If you have some athletic background where you ran before, you're going to be at a huge advantage because your legs will be more developed than someone who hasn't, done fair amounts of running in their youth or in college when they played sports. All right. So if you have some athletic background in the sport that required a fair amount of running or lots of impact on your foot, all right, or legs rather, okay, you're gonna want to do nothing but mileage for 4 months, okay? And the purpose of this is so you can develop an aerobic base. An aerobic base is an aerobic foundation. It's like your strength, okay? It's like a baseline level of strength, okay? A good analogy would be um, let's say you go into the gym for 2 years, okay, and let's say your bench press is 250. Well, you'll develop a foundation of strength. So essentially, no matter how much time you take off effectively, you're always going to be able to bench 135, right? Like it's super hard not to bench 135 after you reach a certain level. It's okay, a certain foundation of strength, okay? Like you should always be able to bench 135 if you've been in the gym for a couple of years, no matter what, right? And so think of your aerobic foundation like that. This is the foundation that's going to allow you to you know, be more successful in the future. It's your base, right? Imagine you have a building, it's a base and it's a foundation, and it has to be stable, okay? It's going to make your breathing, it's going to make your your breathing easier, okay? It's very important to build this. So you want to do nothing but mileage for 4 months, okay? So like it also, now the mileage at which you run, it totally depends on your athletic background. But like if you played soccer, for example, your mileage can be a lot higher than a guy who played basketball. Or if you played lacrosse, your mileage can be a lot higher than a football player. Or of course, if you ran track or cross country, your mileage could be a lot higher than someone who, um, you know, um, you know, played an impact sport. But regardless, you want to build an aerobic base for 4 months, and I recommend starting anywhere from 15 miles per week and building up to 30 miles per week over the course of 4 months. Now, you may see a lot of hybrids running way more mileage than this, but most likely, unless they came from a track and field background, they didn't start out running really high mileage, okay? Like, yeah, you see hybrids like Nick Barra, whoever, running 60, 70 miles per week. You see guys like me running 70 miles per week, but I've been running for 15 years. You have to keep that in mind. Like, it took me 15 years to be able to do that without getting injured. And the reason you don't want to increase your mileage too high too soon is because that's when you start getting injuries, okay? You don't want to get injured. The purpose of this is to build your aerobic foundation. And make no mistake about it, you can gain a lot of fitness by just running 15 to 30 miles a week. If you develop a good, strong foundation of running 15 to 30 miles per week for about 4 months, as someone with an athletic background, that's going to set you up for the future to run even more further along down the run. So over the course of 4 months, you can start at 15 miles per week, and you can run 30 miles per week. And you want to rest. You want to rest when your body tells you need rest. Okay, like there's a difference between fatigue and actual pain. Like if you want to be a hybrid, you should know the difference between. You're most likely a lifter, so you should know the difference between good pain and, oh, I'm going to get injured pain. So you want to rest according to when you need rest. Okay, so if you're running 5 days, if you're running 15 miles a week, you can do something like 3 miles 5 days a week. If you're doing something like 30 miles a week, you could do something like 4 miles 5 days a week, and something like 5 miles 4 days a week, a 6 mile run and a 4 mile run or something like that. But you want to build from 15 to 30 miles over 4 months, and you want these efforts to be low intensity. By low intensity, I don't mean like super super easy. They can be if you need to be. It's okay if you need to be. Like if you don't have the strength in your legs to run at a higher pace, don't worry. Just run as slow as you need to. but you want to run according to effort. So it should be around like zone 2 heart rate. And your zone 2 heart rate is a heart rate, zone 2 out of maximum. It's a certain percentage of your maximum heart rate. Your heart rate, it has zones relative to your max heart rate. You want to be in zone 2 most of the time, which is a low intensity effort. It's an effort at which you could presumably talk and have a conversation okay? All right, step 4. So if you're running and cycling with no athletic background, your training's a little different. You want to do nothing but mileage for 6 months, okay? And you want to build an aerobic base, and you want to start at about 8 miles per week, and you want to peak at about 25 miles per week. Again, it takes time to build up to high mileage without getting injured. And so I know you guys might be thinking, well, 25 miles per week, that's not much. Okay, well, actually, you can get extremely fit. You can run very fast depending on your genetics and your talent off of 25 miles per week. And again, the purpose of this is to develop aerobic strength. Again, there were years in my life where I was only running 25 miles per week. There was years in my life where I was only running 40 miles per week. There were years in my life where I was only running 50 miles a week. It's just now, about 15 years in, where I'm running 70 miles a week. All right. And you want these also to be low intensity zone 2 efforts. Again, so if you're a beginner, to hybrid training, your legs are most likely going to be extremely fatigued, right? So like you'll get to a point eventually after doing this for a long time. You'll get to a point to where you can run at zone 2 pretty much every single day without being fatigued. It's going to take a while to get there most likely. All right. So if you need to run extremely slowly just to get used to running, that's fine. It's for beginners, right? Like this is a lot harder for beginners who don't come from athletic backgrounds. Run as slowly as you need to, and eventually over time your muscles will get used to it, used to running, right? Because if your body's not used to running movement, you're most likely going to be in shock and extremely fatigued. But over time, you'll be able to increase that. All right. You'll be able to run extremely far. So if you need to run super, super duper slow, like 11, 12 minutes per mile, that's fine. Do that for a long period of time, and eventually you'll just get better and faster, right? So after y'all spend 4 to 6 months developing your aerobic foundation, you want to incorporate more intense efforts, all right? So after about 4 to 6 months, you want to start incorporating strides 1 to 2 times a week. Now, strides, the purpose of strides are to help you develop your speed. It's a part of speed development. Get your heart rate up. All right. And you want to do strides anywhere from 100 to 250 meters. And you want to run them between your mile pace and your 800-meter pace. So let's say you run a 6-minute mile. You want to run 100 meters at 6 minute per mile pace. You can do strides anywhere from mile to 800-meter pace. So let's say your 800-meter pace is 2.5 minutes. You want to run strides anywhere from 60 minutes per mile pace to 2.5 minutes per 800-meter pace. Okay, you want to do those 1 to 2 times a week, depending on what your body says it can handle. Okay, and then you can incorporate threshold workouts. You incorporate threshold workouts. All of this occurs within blocks, except strides. You can do strides year round, except I would avoid doing them during aerobic base training because they're not necessary. But otherwise, you can do strides year long. But these next few workouts we're going to talk about, they require periodization, right? So you don't just do them when you feel like them, but you do them intentionally at a certain point in training. Of course, you can do these whenever you want if you're not training for anything, if you just want to be better, right? But like these technically require periodization. So threshold workouts are workouts ran at the pace that you can sustain for approximately 1 hour. So there are more intense efforts, but you can talk at this pace, and the pace shouldn't get really hard until about 40 minutes in, and then you have VO2 max efforts, which is a lot more higher intensity. It's between like your 3K and 5K race pace, right? A lot of these workouts are done on a track, and then you have your anaerobic efforts, which are pretty much anything between miles, like 800-meter pace. Okay, but again, if you're new, you need to focus on building base for 4 to 6 months, and then incorporate strides for speed development. Then you can start incorporating other types of workouts, and the workouts you do are dependent on where you are in your training. For example, if you base build for 6 months and you decide to do a 5K 3 months later, right? You would do strides every week, and then the first like 3 to 4 weeks you would do nothing but threshold workouts, and then from weeks like 4 to like 10 really, you do VO2 max efforts, and in between works 4 to like 11, you would do VO2 max and some anaerobic stuff. You'd mix and match VO2 max anaerobic. So like all of this has intention, and if y'all want to increase your VO2 max, the most effective way to do that is literally just by doing base mileage. Okay, this will allow you to build a super good foundation. And if y'all are interested for coaching, one-on-one coaching, the link's in the bio. How to become a hybrid, how to bodybuild, how to get jacked, how to get shredded, how to bodybuild and run concurrently, all that good stuff. If y'all are interested, links in the bio. And that's all I got for you guys today. I hope it helped. If y'all have anything you want me to talk about, just leave a comment, let me know, and I'll consider talking about it. And that's all I got for y'all today. If you liked the video, leave a like, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace.